let's turn a little bit more to COVID and the politics of that. You got through some really interesting moments, but I couldn't help but notice you really you devoted a lot of time to your relationship with then President Trump. And I had this really interesting realization that he was really worried about what you thought. And I know he couldn't fire you, but he kept saying, "We're good, right? We're good, right?" You'd get in these things about masks in schools. And why do you think he was so worried about your relationship?
Jeremy, I don't know exactly why, but one thing that I described in one part of the memoir was we had a certain positive rapport between us, and I wasn't sure whether it was here's a guy from Queens and here's a guy from Brooklyn. They both have that kind of New Yorkishness about them that you can relate to, and it was kind of we really related to each other quite well in the beginning. He's a very charismatic guy. We had not yet gotten into the January 6th, which completely turned me around about it. So I was able to tolerate some of his narcissism and some of his braggadocio and stuff like that. So our relationship was good enough that when it became clear that I had to speak out against him, and he actually got angry with me and saying, "Tony, what the hell are you doing? You got to be more positive." He was uncomfortable that we would all of a sudden be at odds with each other. And that's why he said multiple times, "We're okay, aren't we? We're still good, Tony. We're still good." And I said, "Fine, we're good." It wasn't until the very, very end of his fourth year when it became clear that there was trouble with the election and that wasn't going the right way did he then start believing what many people were chanting, "Fire Fauci, fire Fauci." But right to the end, he never wanted to fire me. In fact, he even said, "You have too illustrious career. I don't want to fire you, but a lot of people really are angry with you." That's what he said. He didn't say, "I'm angry with you." He said, "A lot of people really are angry with you." So it was really an interesting dynamic that we had with each other, that his staff was much, much more angry with me and disliked me for my telling the truth than he was. He just blew it by and just, kept the relationship going.
There's an opera about Scalia and Ginsburg, but I think the psychodrama between Fauci and Trump might be the more interesting one.
Maybe.
In terms of just going back to the response to COVID and thinking about just the early days, reading your book, there are two names that popped out as people who might, other than yourself, have saved the most lives of anyone out there. And I think, and I'm curious who you would say, of people you worked with, who by virtue of their scientific or contributions or something else, I'll name Deborah Burks, for getting the longer period of shelter in place or what we call a shutdown. And another one, surprising, Stanley Chera, a person you mentioned in your book. Who can you tell everyone who that is if you remember?
Yeah, he's the friend of Donald Trump who actually died of COVID and got Trump to realize that, hey, this is a serious disease. I was talking to him one day, and the next thing I knew, he was on a ventilator and I couldn't speak with him. Yeah. It's very interesting that, we get criticized. I get criticized because they think I did it, but Debbie really did she worked her butt off in the White House, despite some difficult circumstances, particularly when they brought Scott Atlas in, who tried to undermine everything that she said and did. But when she put together the program for the 15-day shutdown, followed by the 30-day extension, we get criticized for having done that, but that saved a lot of lives,
Yeah.
a lot of lives.
What do you think about the NIH's direction and any reforms that are going on there?
Well, it depends. I mean, obviously, you should always intermittently look at what reforms you might do to make it a better place. I think the NIH should do that. I'm afraid that some of the proposed reforms that need to be carefully looked at before you enact them. I mean, the idea about all of a sudden consolidating 27 institutes into one-third the number, I'm not so sure that's a good idea. Having restrictions on the type of research, I think you have to be responsible and accountable for what you do. But I get a little bit concerned about outside non-scientific political people determining what kind of research can and should be done. I get a little bit concerned about that.
If you had to appoint the next CDC director, who will be in your top three if Mandy Cohen decides to step down the next administration?
I'm not going there, Jeremy.
Okay,
I'll
I
leave
know.
that to a search committee.
Okay, fair enough.
By
Well,
the way, I think Mandy's doing a really good job. And
really, tell me, what do you think she's doing so well?
well, I think she's out there trying to, reestablish the credibility of the CDC. She's out there, very publicly going around, traveling a lot, just showing that the CDC really cares, that it's a really very top-notch organization, has committed people. I think she's really good for the institution.
I thought it was really interesting. That you spoke a lot about growing up in Brooklyn, parochial schools, Catholic upbringing, Holy Cross undergraduate, and how the Jesuits taught you really about public service and helping others. And that's what drove you to medical school. But
Right.
for a guy who worked with Francis Collins for his entire career, I don't even know if the word God appears in your book. What tell me about your views on faith and religion, Dr. Fauci.
Yeah, I don't usually talk about it, and I won't talk much about it, but um, I uh, I rely a lot on the fundamental principles that I learned in the context of my Catholic upbringing, predominantly with the Jesuit priests in high school and in college, who really instilled upon me something that I learned from my parents that I describe in the memoir, that they were steeped in service to the community. It was out of the nidus of a pharmacy in the middle of the Bensonhurst section of Brooklyn, where he was kind of like the doc for the neighborhood and was the neighborhood psychiatrist and marriage counselor or what have you, was always service to others. So I was kind of in my DNA from the beginning, but I am not a religious person in the sense of, call upon God in prayer. I don't do that. I mean, I just try and live by the principles that are fundamental to the Catholic Jesuit spirit, but I don't wear religion on my sleeve. That's not me.
Yeah. And another place where I thought about this in reading your book was actually in the infamous powder incident, where in the anthrax scare, there comes an envelope to your office. You open it, it flies in your face, and you think, "Oh God, this is either you know, baking powder or ricin or anthrax. I might die."
Right.
And and of course, it was thank goodness it was just a hoax, but it was just nothing. But you said you don't fear death. You do not fear death. Um, Tell me about that. You're a person who's been thinking about life and death here in a very serious way and you've seen a lot of death. Um, why aren't you afraid of death? It all goes away in an instant, right?
Again, each individual, as you know, Jeremy, has their own outlook towards life and what it means and what death means. I said that and I meant it. I don't fear death. I'm 83 years old. I have a lot of life in me. I have a wonderful family. Um, I'm proud of what I did in my career. I'm still active now. I enjoy being on the faculty at Georgetown. So I really want to live. I want to live a lot longer. But death is interesting. I see friends all around me that die, and it's a natural evolution of life is death. So I don't want to be afraid of it, and I'm not. So when I was sitting there waiting for the results of that anthrax, I said, there's three possibilities. Either it's going to be anthrax, so I'll go on Cipro for 30 to 60 days, or it's going to be ricin. No matter what I do, I'm going to die. So rather than, sit down and get myself all bent out of shape, I'll just say, it is what it is. And luckily, as you said, it turned out to be nothing, just plain old commercially available powder.
All right. And are you done writing? Was that a one-off or that was a big book, but I feel like there's more.
No, I don't know. Right now I'm still in the process of the rollout of this book, but I enjoyed it, Jeremy. I was surprised by how much I really enjoyed, writing and editing and getting it perfect, trying to, getting it with the sentences as crisp as you can and getting the continuity and the flow from paragraph to paragraph, from chapter to chapter. That was fun. So I could see myself somehow doing that again. I don't know exactly what topic it would be, but I very much enjoyed the process of writing the memoir.
Do you feel like it's been a year and a half, I think, since you stepped down from NIAID? How do you feel about your own health? Do you feel better than ever? Do you feel like you've recovered in some way?
Yeah, no, I feel really good. Thank goodness. I mean, I feel energetic. I do take better care of myself. I mean, I was chronically, Jeremy, truly chronically sleep deprived for several years, where I was getting ridiculous amounts of sleep in the middle of the crises, 4 hours, sometimes less. It was only the insistence of my very insightful wife, Christine, who essentially insisted that I get more than 4 hours of sleep a night and that I drink water and stuff. So right now, I get 7.5, 8 hours sleep, which I hadn't done for a very long time. And that makes me feel much, much better.
And
Much better.
you don't miss the adrenaline?
No, I got a lot of adrenaline out of the book, to be honest with you. I don't mean to say this in a way to blow off these things, but there's a little bit of a been there, done that, feeling. And yeah, the adrenaline is nice, but I've had a lot of adrenalization in my life.
Indeed, you have. And I'm glad that you're still working with the next generation as well. So thank you for the book and for all your service, Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. It's always great being with you. Take care.